Hi, I'm Tim Guest from Zoedale. We've been supplying the biogas industry for over 10 years now. We're here at the Birmingham NEC for the UK AD and Biogas show. And I'm about to catch up with the biogas industry expert. Hi Lucy, hi.
Hi Tim.
We're just over here actually. Thanks for joining us. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Lucy Hopwood. I'm lead consultant for Bioenergy and AD at the National Non-Food Crop Centre, or NNFCC, as we call ourselves.
Excellent. Okay, and now we've got a few questions for you on AD and biogas. As a supplier, we've been supplying the industry for over 10 years now, but recently we have seen a real sharp increase in number of inquiries and orders from biogas companies. Can you explain any reason for this increase?
Yeah, there's been a kind of a real heightened interest over the last 10 years. So I think the genuine interest started in 2010 when the government, new government, then published the coalition agreement, which specifically picked out AD as a technology of interest and one that they were going to focus on. So that's kind of really driven the wave of interest that we've experienced, and then it's taken since then for the momentum to pick up. And I think last year we've just had kind of hit that level of momentum.
And how sustainable do you think this growth is in terms of supply chain, but also in skilled labour as well?
I think, yeah, as I say, we've hit a certain level of momentum now. AD is a very complex industry and they're complex supply chains, and you can't just kind of turn the industry on and off as you can with kind of solar or wind, something that's much more simple. So it's taken 10 years of kind of activity to get to the point we're at, 5 years of subsidies to get to the point that we're at. We've built that momentum. So I think now in terms of growth, the growth that we've experienced is really sustainable going forward, and I expect we could continue that growth.
That's great, because I say as a supplier we have had to be quite careful in our planning. You know, some of the orders that we're working on are quite huge, and sometimes we've actually had the worry of actually running out of valves to supply them with, but that hasn't happened yet. So, you briefly mentioned the government. What are their views on biogas and subsidies?
So they're quite keen on AD generally. I mentioned specifically their commitment in the 2010 coalition agreement. So that's where it all stemmed from, and that's the policies were introduced around that time as well. So in terms of subsidies, there's the feed-in tariff that supports the electricity intended for smaller scale electricity generation, so perfect for AD. There's the renewable heat incentive, which supports it supports heat generation and biomethane injection to the gas grid. So there are quite a range of subsidies available. The subsidies were introduced around 2009, 10, 11, and over time the tariff rates, the level of subsidy is digressing. So the subsidies aren't as attractive now as they were then, the idea being that the industry is maturing and doesn't need such levels of subsidy to kind of maintain the status quo and move forward, but that's not really what we're experiencing.
Okay, that all makes sense. Now you kindly did a guest blog post for us about a year ago, and we had a comment on there from someone regarding purpose-grown maize and purpose-grown fuels for biogas, and could they actually be bad in terms of farming and transportation? How would you respond to that?
We have seen quite an uptake of, or an increased area of maize, whole crop cereals, grass grown for AD. So it's not all about maize, it's about crops more generally. Okay. So in terms of the crop area that's currently produced, we monitor the industry and kind of feedstock use and provision. And future planned use. So in terms of the current area, it's around about 29,000 hectares currently grown for AD, which is 0.05% of the UK arable area, so it's a tiny amount. And if all projects in the pipeline develop by 2018, 2020, that area would increase to about 60 or 70,000 hectares. So still it's less than 1% of the arable area. It seems like a big number because the industry feels quite big now, but in reality it isn't such a great number.
Okay. And lastly, what are your predictions for the future of AD and biogas, sort of mid to long term?
I think so. Mid to long term prospects are look good from what we've built as an industry in the previous 10 years, or kind of 5 years really, with subsidies. So The industry's developed hugely in a very short time scale, so I think it's really exciting what could happen in the future. But that's all assuming a positive kind of policy and regulatory landscape, which isn't really or evident at the moment. So we've got a lot of policy uncertainty in the FIT review. The RHI budget beyond April 2016 is currently uncertain. So there's so much uncertainty. The sustainability criteria has been introduced this year, so that will in a way kind of restrict feedstock usage, and it's hard for industry to get their head around and to implement. So if we can get through the next 12 months and kind of come out the other side with a strong proposition, really, business proposition, then I think the industry can be really exciting.
Okay, so things are hopefully looking good then. So, all right, okay. Well, that's it from me now. That's been great. Thank you for your time, Lucy. That's been really useful.